Hi, I'm Kim Brasser, your host, facilitator, director of operations, and today guest. That's the thing about owning and operating. I wear all the hats all the time, even when I'm delegating. Some things I can't delegate, like the real life that happens behind the scenes as we are interviewing guests, reading books, getting ready to give you insight and inspiration to how you can make a difference in racial equity in your lifetime, not by going out to change the world in 1 week, but in the baby steps you do in your day-to-day life by becoming conscious, aware of your biases, and aware of the needs of the people around you. So today, in the spirit of keeping it raw, real, and relatable, and reclaiming the joy of DEI in this space, I'm going to take you behind the curtain of my to-do list and what it takes to accomplish that. A week ago, my oldest sister passed away from a long goodbye of dementia. That is the third sibling of four that I've lost in the last 15 months. And while the show must go on, and I'm really deadline driven, and I'm good at putting my head down when I have to, the fact is I'm retired from corporate America. And being retired, one of the things I love the most is that I don't have to do anything on any given day without my express intent or permission. And that is the freedom that comes with retirement for me. And so today, as I am 2 days behind getting this to my producer, and I have gone over all of the trainings and all of the things I could be sharing with you at my infinite wisdom. The bottom line is, when I started this, the first topic for the first episode wanted to be beyond burnout, reclaiming joy in DEI efforts. And every time I have a conversation with a guest, it is about getting behind their scripted, what they do in their daily life to move the needle toward racial equity, and into what is frustrating, what is rewarding, what keeps you going when the tide turns and suddenly it looks like we're swimming upstream. And so for me, my nervous system in this last week has been a little bit numb. A friend of mine sent a little text to me this morning, and it got me off of dead center, and she wasn't trying to do that. She asked a question, and I'm going to read it to you. So I'm an introvert. And when my nervous system gets overwhelmed or on overload, I pull back. I go inside. I'm also born in July. My mom used to say I would crawl into my shell, my little cancer crab shell. And I understand now what she meant, because that is where I refresh and recover. I don't do it in crowds. I don't do it publicly. I tend to withdraw. And once I have felt my feelings, thought my thoughts, planned my actions, then I'm ready to come back out and make sense to the world of my internal travel through grief, any kind of grief. And certainly doing this work with DEI comes with it a burden of proof and a burden of grief. And if you've been doing the work, I'm going to understand immediately what that feels like. But in this case, there was simply personal grief on top of, my never-ending to-do list. And it put me on stall. And so my producer's been very patient, but today is deadline day. And I have just been not thinking about it much. I feel at peace. It was a long goodbye. I haven't had the relationship with my sister that I grew up with for several years. Not by any animosity, just by virtue of the fact that her memory bank didn't include me anymore. So my friend said, and it touches me because people who know me know to reach in when they don't hear from me for a few days after an event, and she does. And she waited a respectful week, and I'm much appreciative. Just touching base, my friend, hoping you're okay. and at peace. And I couldn't respond right away because I think I'm at peace. I have accepted what is. It's not like the other two siblings I lost last year that were a little more surprising and sudden. Missed opportunity. So my answer was such a simple question, such a complicated response. And I realized that I am like a phone on reserve power, only doing what is absolutely required of me in any given moment. Deadline driven always, but not always meeting the first preferred deadline. I know what drop dead is, and I will always get it in right under the wire, which is going to be today. But I had no idea until I responded to her text what we were going to talk about today. So considering that question left me inspired to be transparent, raw, and real. Anybody who worked in corporate human resources for any period of time knows how to mask. Anybody with any kind of autism in their family or spectrum things or ADHD or menopause or mental health or any of the million other of things that I've experienced in my life knows that focus is sometimes a problem anyway under the best of circumstances. And when your nervous system gets overloaded, all systems slow down. And rather than fight that or try to make that be something it isn't, and I don't have to suck it up and show up in an office, I have simply been with my feelings and with my family and allowed things to unfold in my inner world and in my outer world. How does that relate to burnout? I used to do trainings all the time in healthcare facilities about how to avoid burnout. And the thing that caused burnout the most for people is when they're understaffed and overworked and they are trying to please everybody around them so they can keep their job or get the raise or get the promotion or stay in the in crowd or whatever it is. And they think that it's just hard right now, but as soon as we get somebody hired, then the pressure's going to be off and I'm going to love my job again. Or as soon as this boss passes through, then it's going to be okay again. Or as soon as my divorce is final, then I can get back to normal. And what we don't realize when we get to that overload place is the normal that we had before we got overwhelmed is never going to be the same again. You're going to be better in the end, but you're going to be different. It's going to be different. So, so my burnout was always you had to perform to be accepted. And I'm choosing every day in every way as I move toward racial equity in my lifetime and creating women leaders, particularly white women leaders, to step out of the comfort bubble of privilege and not step back in when it gets hard, any kind of hard. Then the next thing is that when that relief doesn't come, that expected relief, then depression or anxiety or self-medicating will kick in. And now we've compounded the problem. And then we begin to feel hopeless, maybe learned helplessness, maybe true helplessness. There's nothing I can do to control this situation. Out of control. And I always say, if you focus on the problem increases. If you focus on the solution increases. And as long as you are in your executive brain thinking capacity, you can choose where you focus. But when life blindsides you, when you have something that either takes away, it makes you afraid you're going to lose something you want or have, or that you're not going to get something you want, it's like a gut punch. And when that happens, our reptilian brain kicks into survival mode. We're going to fight, flee, freeze, or fawn, one of those four things, any of which keeps us from the legitimate grief that is like emotions passing through. And if we feel them, they will pass through. If we distract and we don't feel them, then they'll get buried. And the problem with buried emotions is when they come up right where you left them. So if you in a rage, but nice girls don't get mad, then you get depressed. You turn it inward, you get depressed, and it will come up again. And when it comes up, it's going to come up right where you buried it. If it's sadness and you put it down and you go distract, or you self-medicate, or you get high, or you get stoned, or you drink your troubles away, whatever it takes, then when that problem goes away, when that goes by the wayside, because now it's going to cost you more than you're willing to pay, and you put down that thing, those feelings, this headache you get that you think is withdrawal, those feelings come right back up to the surface, right where you left them. Just as devastating, just as strong, just as hopeless. Might as well deal with them first time through. So that's what we're doing. So shout out today to Joseph Atalig, my podcast producer, and point person on commentary on YouTube. And one came to my attention about 3 weeks ago, 2 weeks ago. And here's what it says. It was a comment to the thing about colorblind. Will never happen. Each flavor of humanity has their own agendas, and none of them include the other flavors of humanity. It's tribal. It's birds of a feather flocking together. This is an idealistic dream, that's all. But it's a nice dream. Enjoy the fantasy. And I read that and I identified with that because in my previous life, I used to say that about human nature all the time. There will always be wars and rumors of wars. There's nothing I can do about it anyway, so why bother? Why try? Why make the effort? Why make myself uncomfortable when, even if we would solve this racial problem in the United States, look, it's global now. So, we're always going to be in somebody's war. Why bother? And that kept me in my little white bubble with focused on my foreign no more. And people like me who also didn't follow politics, didn't, pick up causes, just kind of go along to get along. I'm not that person so much anymore. The world has shifted, the pandemic shifted, George Floyd happened, which raised awareness. And once you see something, you can't unsee it, no matter how hard you try. Denial's a wonderful thing. It keeps you safe when you can't handle the truth. But when you see the truth, you can't deny it so easily. So what drives me, what moves me to say, I understand this person's thought process, why bother? Nice fantasy, you have a good time with that. But I don't feel like it's incumbent on me to make a change in myself or my family or my community or my organization. And I do feel like every one of us can make a difference from wherever we sit in whatever our capacity is. We are born leaders. So let's get the skill set to do that. So what drives me is the starfish story. And I don't know if you've ever heard it, but it's the one about, there's a little child on the beach and there's all these starfish that have washed ashore, thousands of them, way more than anybody could ever throw back in the water before the tide goes out. And this child is feverishly picking up a starfish and throwing it back in the water and picking up another and throwing back at the water as hard as they can, as long as they can. And an adult comes along, knows better, wiser, right? Oh, isn't that cute what you're trying to do? And says, there's too many. You're not going to make a difference. They're going to perish anyway. Why wear yourself out? Let it go. It's not going to matter. It's not going to make a difference. And the child looks at this person and looks at the starfish on the ground and picks it up and throws it back in the ocean and says, made a difference to that one. Well, that speaks to me because after 25 years of recovery work with highly functioning addicts and alcoholics, one addict can keep 20 codependents busy. And when I work with one addict to get straight or sober, those 20 people and the 20 people they touch and the 20 people they touch are changed for weeks, months, years, lifetimes, generations. You don't know the impact one life on one life can make until you make that approach with love, commitment, and determination. And no matter who comes at me with their comments, no matter how many trolls we have to block on TikTok, no matter how much upheaval in my personal life, that doesn't change my focus that white women advancing racial equity is the only way it's going to get done. We have power, we have position, we have influence, and we have ability. We have resources that are not available to the minority voice, even though they're going to be the majority demographic in 2045. And so the voice for that demographic must shift in the next 20 years. I'm committed, I'm dedicated. I have no reason not to be. As we recap this first busy, crazy, captivating month of our podcast launch, special thanks to my podcast producer and friend, Joseph Atalik, who has kept me moving forward week after week through the good and the bad. And to appreciate Jeremy Quintanilla from Age of Radio podcast platform, who miraculously gets this out on 24-hour notice to every major podcast program so that you can find our podcast, weekly podcast, every Friday at 3 p.m. Eastern on any platform you use. We're on Apple, Amazon, Audible, Spotify, iHeartRadio, YouTube Music, and on YouTube proper. There are 3 ways we communicate: our passion, our purpose, and our principles. And that is mouth to mouth, which is when I'm giving you data or training tips or content. And then there is head to head, when I'm helping you understand why it matters, why it's important that we know these things, why it's important that what happened 100 years ago is recognized now, because it has set up systems of inequity that make it impossible in this moment to find racial justice across the board. And then it's heart to heart, and that's where I excel, because heart to heart is, and why does it matter to you? Why does it matter to me? What is it that breaks your heart for the things that break the heart of God? What is it that you agonize over and feel inept or incompetent or insecure about trying to assist or help or engage? Those are the things in diversity, equity, and inclusion, in workplaces, organizations, families, or in your personal life, that all of these podcasts are designed to address. I just had one of our first podcasts was Holly Hartman, another shout out. She's the director of the Rare Woman Collective. And this is Radical Action, Advancing Racial Equity. I just got them. They're still shrink wrapped. These are conversation cards. And I don't get a fee or a perk for showing you these, but I'm showing you these because these are great when I'm going to get 20 of my friends together around coffee and we're going to do a little impromptu, wine and working around racial equity. These are great conversation starters. They're also good for my family so that I can get, we play little trivia games all the time. Why don't we try this one? The other thing it's really good for is helping me unpack my own internal biases that I never even knew to look at until I saw the question on the card. So at onevoiceevolving.com/resources, you will find a list of every podcast and the things, the guests, and the 3 things that they most recommend. And this is one of the recommendations on the first podcast that was done in May. Highly recommended, if you, as a next step, if you're so inclined. The next one up was Dr. Nikki Lanier, and she was our second episode, and it was Grace Over Gotcha, Creating a World Without Racism. And one of the resources she shared was the Federal Reserve report on what racism costs us. And it is economic, financial, statistical data that if you love, it's another place to go look. If you want the Reader's Digest version, go catch up with her on the Rare Woman Collective. Look at her for TikTok videos. She does a lot of them, and you're going to get some great content there for fun and for free. And then finally, Susan McHughiston, who wrote the D Word, 12 Steps for Diversity Recovery. And we had a wonderful conversation about how white women think colorblind is a good thing, and why that's not something to aspire to. One of the things she gave us for a resource was the Harvard implicit bias test. And I went and did that test last night, actually. And it's for everything. There's like a list of, do you have bias about this? Do you have bias about that? And they have one for brown skin versus light skin. Light skin and dark skin is what they call it. And you can tell, you can do a little quick self-test that nobody gets to see to tell, are you as evolved as you think you are? Or is that childhood programming still running on automatic pilot? Because I certainly showed up moderate myself. I got a lot of work to do. None of us ever arrives. These biases were in place before I was 8 years old, and they are part of the operating system that I will forever be modifying with apps and artificial intelligence, but that left unattended or under stress are likely to pop to the surface. If that happens, if it pops to the surface, then acknowledge it, receive it, allow trusted people to lean in for correction, and consider what they have to say. That's what we do. And then we make correction if needed. We consider context if not. And then we move on to do the next baby step toward the next right thing that's going to move the needle for advancing racial equity where we live, work, and play. And I hope that I get to meet you in person sometime where you live, work, and play as we share. But in the meantime, thank you for watching the podcast. Thank you for enjoying it and sharing it with your friends. And I hope that next month brings you even more amazing content and you will engage with us. We are on every social media platform, most every social media platform, most every podcast platform, and always accessible on our website, onevoiceevolving.com. Enjoy your day. Enjoy your week. Happy Friday.